Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Wednesday morning. Thanks for tuning in to News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. It is 6:06 on O'Connor and Company. We have a great lineup today. At 6:35, we'll talk to Cal Thomas about the debate and the latest news. At 7:05, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. He'll also have some reactions to the debate. At 8:05, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We'll talk to Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost on the crisis, and it is a crisis, in Springfield, Ohio. And at 8:35, boy, I'm also looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Brent Bozell from the Media Research Center. He is going to talk about the debate moderators, or
was the debate moderated? Because I'm not entirely certain that it was, Julie.
Yeah, the campaign staffers for the Harris campaign. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside my friend Andrew Langer. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Julie. And maybe that's what we should do in the future. Each campaign picks a senior campaign person to moderate the debate, and then that's, that would be the way to go down and do it. I mean, it certainly couldn't be any worse than what we saw last night, would it?
Well, at least we'd be being honest with the American public.
Yes.
This is look, I refuse to be an Eeyore about this. Everybody, I think the sort of prevailing wisdom here is that Trump didn't have a great night, and I refuse to say Kamala won because it wasn't a fair fight. It absolutely was 3 against 1. And I feel like Trump was remarkably restrained in the face of this bias that we saw laid out for everyone. Just really quickly,
Please.
Andrew, I want to talk about, look, it wasn't just he showed remarkable restraint in the face of the media bias that was on display, but in the face of constant insults and name calling from Kamala Harris, constant she's trying to trigger him. She's trying to get under his skin, which, sadly it worked. But it was constant. Right. And the last thing I'll say is the constant lies. She lied about late-term abortion. She lied about the Charlottesville quote on Very Fine People. She lied about January 6th. She lied about the bloodbath comment, crime data, border security, Project 2025, fracking, her own record on things. It was relentless. And so, look, in the face of this, sure, Trump could have had a better night, but my goodness, he really was able to keep control in the face of that.
I wish he hadn't taken the bait on every answer. And for those of you who missed the first hour, so we talked about this. Essentially, what would happen is the moderators would lob a softball question to Kamala Harris.
Yep.
She would give the softball answer. And an answer that in any other circumstance, somebody would have been able to just take apart. And that's the silver lining here. We're going to get to this. Unfortunately, she would tack on a barb at the end of every answer that would induce Donald Trump, tempt Donald Trump to go down the rabbit hole, and invariably he went down the rabbit hole. But that's why the silver lining, though, is that those statements are there for the rest of us to go and pick apart. So when Kamala Harris talks about, abortion, or she talks about fracking, or she talks about small business and her nonsensical thing, or when she talks about her nonsensical statements regarding unity, I believe in unity. I believe that what brings us together, is better than what divides us. Go ahead, Julie. I'm sorry.
Well, let's talk about some of her comments. Let's do cut 5. Kamala Harris confirming her support of unrestricted abortion.
But I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. And then Trump sort of hits back, cut 6.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside.
Time
and
out
then
for
we
a second.
determine what we
Stop that. Exactly. He did not say West Virginia. He said or maybe he said it later.
Just to explain
okay.
it, there are some claims that he got mixed up with Virginia and West Virginia. Not true. But I am really happy to hear him say, answer the question. No, that's okay. Answer the question. You're absolutely right. Because there's some chatter out there that, he got confused. He said West Virginia.
I think there was a later segment in which he said West Virginia, but it sounded clipped him. And I'm like, I know he didn't say that initially.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But the point is I was glad to hear him say, answer the question. What restrictions? And then he said, why don't you ask her that? It was one of the, I said earlier I was frustrated with Trump that he did not, he wasn't aggressive with the moderators. There were several times where I was like, why aren't you calling them out on their bias here? So in that clip he did. Again, talking about the bias, let's play cut 7 because this is this bias sort of laid out. Let's play cut 7.
The central cut.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
That is not true, and we know that because Governor Northam admitted that this happens. He is a doctor. He was on a radio show. This happened a couple years ago where he said, look, these babies who survive abortions are put on a table and, given some modicum amount of comfort while they slip away. And it was an absolutely monstrous quote from Governor Northam, and it really revealed just how far these pro-abortion politicians are willing to go.
Let me go back to this other point, which is you just the juxtaposition. There is Donald Trump making a statement, right? And then it's the ABC fact checker responding to Donald Trump and then asking Kamala Harris to respond to the crutch that they just gave her. I mean, that's why this is the money. I'm sorry. Real quick, we got a second here. Michael, do me a favor. Play cut 6 again. Let's hear cut 6. Trump hitting Kamala. We're not going to play the whole thing. Just play the beginning of it.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
Okay.
Also, why was
wait,
1 second. Why was her mic on?
Right, exactly.
Why was her mic on?
I got a. You know what's so funny? I got a text message like right after the debate began from somebody doing stuff up in New York. Debate commentary up in New York, and she's like, "Why do they have 2 microphones, Andrew? Why do they have both a lavalier microphone, folks? That's the microphone you have on your lapel. Why do they have both those and the main microphones?" And I thought maybe it was because of when they were walking out. So anyway, so Donald Trump hits her on abortion, and then again, Michael, let's go ahead and play cut number 7 here.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to it.
Right. Here, CNN moderator, I'm sorry, not CNN, ABC News moderator responding, Lindsay Davis, responding to Donald Trump.
Yeah, coming in and firefighting.
Handing her the crutch. Yes.
But
hold on, that's exactly it. Kamala Harris, let me put out this fire for you, and let me now hand you the fire extinguisher so you can look like you put out the fire.
Yeah, but the other thing is, can we just talk about how completely sickening it is that Lindsay Davis is like, no state in the country where it's legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. First of all, that's not true because we know that it happened. Thank you, Governor Northam, for proving that. But also the idea that that's the line after it's born. Lindsay Davis would be totally fine if you go into labor, you're literally laboring in a hospital bed, and then you decide, well, I'd like an abortion. That's okay, according to these monsters on the left, including Lindsay Davis. Look, we have so much more to get to, and we'll continue in a moment. But first, it is 6:15. Yeah, so, the abortion issue and the sort of firefighting from the moderators was enormously frustrating. But there were more fact checks on Trump and more lies from Kamala. Let's do cut 9. We're going to sort of pivot over to her once again denying her support for bans on fracking.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil.
This is a woman just years ago, just a few years ago, saying there is no question. This is a direct quote. There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. And all that stuff that she says, you know, that they did, it didn't do anything to, I mean, look at the gas prices. Right. Look at the energy prices. I mean, all you have to do is look at your own gas and energy bills and know that this administration did nothing to bring costs down and to make us energy independent.
And let me add to this, right? This gets into the same rhetoric we were hearing on gas stoves. You know, we're not trying to ban gas stoves. No, what you're doing is you're placing conditions on how you go about engaging in the activity, how you go about getting a gas stove, what kind of gas stoves you have. So it creates what is a de facto ban on gas stoves. We're opening up more lands for fracking, yet what we're going to do is we're going to place restrictions on how you can go about fracking. We're going to make it so onerous. We're going to make it so burdensome. We're going to make it so expensive for you to go and utilize these things that you can't do it. You know, it's so funny. A good example of this, right? She's talking about oil production, Julie. It was a year ago I was working on a rulemaking for those of you who are the uninitiated, is when an agency goes out and they change policy. And one of the offshore drilling agencies was trying to put new rules on how independent oil producers have to, the conditions by which they can get their permits done. And the conditions they were putting on the permits would have made it impossible for these independent oil producers to get the permits necessary to go and drill. So they can say, we're opening all of this stuff up, but if on the one hand you're making it so much more difficult to engage in this activity, it is the de facto ban on the thing that you claim you're expanding. And that's exactly what they've done, right? We made increased drilling, an offer of drilling in areas that nobody wants to drill in, or offer up offshore oil leases in areas where nobody wants to go and get offshore oil. Yeah. And anyway,
I just want to get to this J.D. Vance response. Cut 10. J.D. Vance responded to her claim that she's suddenly pro-fracking. Cut 10.
He also really hammered her on her inconsistencies, right? This is a person who said she wanted to ban fracking. Now she says she doesn't. She wanted to defund the police. Now she said she doesn't. She wanted a secure border.
Yeah, and you know, Vance, of course, is very good at responding to these things. But it really is just astonishing that she was able to switch her position, and the moderators said nothing. No fact checks, no drilling down, pardon the pun, on her position.
Right? Yeah. No, that's it. Sorry, I got that. By the way, let me just say this much, as a way of digressing in all of this, because having this conversation with you and reminiscing about what was going on last night. And, you know, in the moment, and certainly for the many hours after last night, as I'm sort of sitting here replaying what happened in my mind, you know, it's easy to sort of get sucked into remembering all of the things that you wanted Trump to say or do. But then as you sort of go through and you remember, oh, my God, there were these moments last night where it was completely incongruous to this. Yeah. You know, this is important stuff. And so, you know, listen, another great moment here.
Listen, sorry, we are going to play more. We're going to play more cuts. We're going to do more analysis of last night. We are not going to be Eeyores, though. We've got much more to get to. Right now, it is 6:21 on WMAL. Okay, more on the debate, last night's debate, and the media just being in the tank. Not a surprise for the Harris campaign.
I was surprised.
Well, actually, after the CNN debate wasn't a total disaster.
Yes,
it was a bit of a shock just how bad they were. But let's talk. Let's highlight this. They kept interrupting Trump. They never interrupted Harris, but they did interrupt Trump quite a bit. These are the moderators I'm talking about here. Cut 13.
Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC.
Right.
Yeah,
by the way, we're going to be joined by Brent Bozell from the Media Research Center to talk him about that very issue in the 8 hour.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that conversation. Cut 14, again, the moderate David Muir tries to debate Trump. So again, you have a moderator. This is why I said this wasn't a debate one-on-one. This was 3-on-1, and this is a good example of that. Cut 14.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump.
Absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. We've got more, so much more. It is 6:29.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Wednesday morning to one and all. Thanks for joining us. We are rolling along at 6:36 on O'Connor and Company. Got a great lineup today. Don't miss it. 7:05. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. He'll give us his reaction to last night's debate. At 8:05, we'll talk to Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. He has got some reaction to what's going on in Springfield, Ohio. That'll be a great conversation. And at 8:35, can't wait for this conversation. Brent Bozell, Media Research Center, and he will give us his reaction to the debate moderators, or as Andrew and I like to call them, the Harris campaign staffers. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside my friend Andrew Langer. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey there. Deep breaths, Julie. Deep breaths.
Joining us
now. It's all
now.
going to be better.
Joining us now, who is going to reassure us, surely, Cal Thomas. Good morning, Cal.
Good morning, Julie and Andrew. I'm your traveling correspondent. I'm here in Germany on the way to Prague, but got up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, because I'm so committed to you guys that I wanted to see the whole debate and give you my take on it.
You are
funny, Cal.
You are wonderful, Cal. And honestly, I'm always wondering where you're going to be calling from. 3 a.m. That is quite a commitment. So did you manage to watch the debates?
Watch the entire thing. I think the interesting first question from David Muir, borrowing a line from the Reagan-Jimmy Carter debate in October of 1980, was fascinating. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Couldn't answer that honestly, because the overwhelming majority of Americans, according to all the polls, show that they don't feel they're better off than 4 years ago. So she had to pivot and tell some irrelevant story about growing up, and then pivoting again to her proposal to spend more and, or as she puts it, invest more, and contributing to our $35 trillion debt, which we can no longer afford.
Yeah, I mean, and that was just it, Kel. I mean, it was interesting because obviously later on in the debate, Donald Trump getting fact-checked near constantly by the moderators, sort of injecting their perspective. You know, there are a couple of times where Donald Trump would do what Kamala Harris had been doing, which was to answer the question that he wants to answer rather than the question that was asked. And the moderators were pushing him on that. But you're absolutely right. That first question out of the gate, she gave this word salad answer, and the moderators never called her on. And I don't think they ever called her on anything.
Well, the one unasked question that I was yearning to be asked was, does Kamala Harris still believe in price controls? They have never worked. They didn't work when Richard Nixon tried them. They don't work in other countries. But that question was never asked, and that's an extremely important question. She reminded me, as I'm writing in my column tomorrow, of what they used to call the new Nixon, the new Richard Nixon. Oh, he was not like the old one. He was totally new. So we're supposed to buy this pig in a poke that all these things that Kamala Harris has said in the past, including federal government paying for reassignment surgery, including abortions for people in the military. Oh, no, we don't believe all that anymore. The key to this is what Bernie Sanders said Bernie Sanders said she's just moving toward the center to win votes, and after she wins the election, she'll go back to being a progressive again. That's all you need to know.
You know, I'd like your opinion on the optics of what we saw last night, that sort of split screen where she could not take her eyes off of him and often had this sort of sourpuss look on her face, and a couple times sort of rolled her eyes. I thought she came off as unlikable. I thought she looked sort of angry and annoyed. What was your opinion on that? Do you think that was a problem for her, or, you know, how do you think she performed?
Yeah, well, she was kind of condescending on a couple of occasions, shaking her head and rolling her eyes, as you say. But I wish that Trump had been less dour. Scowling doesn't help. And I think he could have smiled more. I think he could have looked at her. They were almost forced to shake hands because the podiums were so close to each other, and that was fine. But you know, I'd like to hear from Mr. Trump that our best days are ahead. If we get off this Biden-Harris economic, foreign policy, and every other policy that has been an abject failure by any objective standard, we can still do better. I mean, this is what Jack Kennedy said in 1960. We can do better. Ronald Reagan, our future is bright. It's always ahead of us. And this is stuff that people want to hear. Americans have always responded to positivity and an optimistic outlook. And I think that Trump is missing an opportunity to do that when he looks so dour and sourpuss and saying the country is going to perdition.
Now, Cal, real quick before we let you go, there were a couple of CNN had their instant analysis after the debate. I think it's unsurprising that the majority of folks watching it felt that Kamala Harris won the debate, but Donald Trump's stature and his trust on how he would handle the economy actually grew by a couple of points. That would seem to be a bit of a disconnect here. But is it really? What are your thoughts here?
Well, as James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. That's what affects more people than anything else. Any of these other issues may be appealing to certain demographics within the voting community, but the economy, bread prices, egg prices, gas prices, mortgage rates affect everybody. And I think Trump is way ahead on that. The numbers are showing that the Biden-Harris administration are way behind on that. There's no way they can fix it or do anything about it between now and Election Day, even if they could, and they won't.
Listen, Cal, we always love hearing from you. You be careful in Europe on your travels. I'm a little jealous, I admit. I love tracking where you are each week. So take care, and thanks again for joining us this morning.
Well, I'm delighted. I'm off to have a pet for lunch. So thanks very much.
We've got more to come, including, pets for lunch. It is 6:43 on WMAL.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
I mean...
Can you imagine? He's talking about getting shot in the head.
Right.
And they don't even let him finish.
How about we start with this factor in all of this, which is, I don't know, how about if you're going to ask Kamala Harris, I don't know, whatever softball question is, maybe you turn to Donald Trump and say, you know something, Mr. President, since the last time you were up on a debate stage debating the guy, who, by the way, had to get out because he's mentally incompetent, the last time you were on the stage, I don't know, you got shot at.
Yeah.
How has that changed your outlook on life? Right? How about one positive question?
Right. We had to hear about, Kamala's story of growing. She constantly invokes her own sort of personal stories into these debates. And they couldn't ask him one question about a life-changing event and something that was very traumatic to the nation as a whole. Go ahead.
Kamala, you were raised by your mother in Quebec. Why is it that you were...
They didn't say Quebec.
Hold on. You're
they
missing
never mentioned that.
No. This is my point. Kamala, you were raised by your single mother in Quebec. Is she the one who taught you to wash collard greens in the bathtub? That's the question I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Well, they're never going to mention that she was raised in Quebec in a very Tony neighborhood, and that her parents, she also always acts like, I was a middle-class kid. Her parents were two PhD college professors. I mean, give me a break with this, I'm just a poor girl growing up, in the South. There's another interesting thing that happened, too. I don't know if you noticed this. I think you did. I think you mentioned it. But she talked over Trump several times. So that her mic was not muted. Let's listen to cut 17. You'll hear it.
Ask her that question.
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question. Would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month.
So again,
right.
We're talking about abortion. This is really Kamala's strength, right? They say she's really good on this issue and she really sways women on these issues. And so the issue that is considered her strength, they leave her mic open so that she can talk over him.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Go on. No, go on.
Well, it's just in the end, right? So talking about muting when the other person's talking here. It's
exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a situation in which the conditions were set to do what they could to get under Trump's skin and to get him to react in the way that in many cases Donald Trump reacted.
RFK did react to this afterwards. He was one of the surrogates. He was taking questions in the spin room. Let's listen to his reaction to how biased these moderators were. Cut 16.
Fortunately, we had moderators who were clearly biased, who were constantly fact-checking Donald Trump. None of these kind of whoppers that the vice president was saying, and none of her failure to really explain that, answer that first question, that very, very critical first question. They simply sat there on the sidelines and allowed that to pass.
Well, good for him. Listen, we're going to talk more about this, and Brent Bozell will be on at 8:35 to talk about the media bias that was so obvious in last night's debate. Let's go to the time. It's 6:52.